Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to do a weekly meta breakdown for the Alchemy Best of One format. We're going to be looking at the best decks in Alchemy Best of One after the release of the Lord of the Rings set. I don't normally do Alchemy because the play volumes are fairly low, but with Lord of the Rings being a digital-only format, I thought I'd cover at least one video. Fortunately for Best of Three, there's like literally next to no data. But we're going to do this one as a kind of bonus video for the week, and then we'll have explore videos for the rest to close out the week, and then kind of get into the cycle again. So with the Lord of the Rings set, there's basically the meta has evolved into which flavor of the One Ring do you want to play. The battles are all about the One Ring. The One Ring is life. The One Ring is death. It's how do you combat it, whether it be Shieldred, Bowmaster, whatever it may be. So we're going to take a look at some decks. I've also pulled some decks of folks that just did well on the ladder. They're somewhat best of three decks, but the idea can be ported over as well. But if you like this type of content, we get the data from Untapped every week, so it tracks win rate data. Link is in the video if you want to get started with Untapped. I paste all these deck lists as always with timestamps so you can skip ahead, but we do this for every format: Standard, Historic, Explore, and you can kind of get your deck lists each week in terms of what's the hottest decks, the best performing decks each week. So if you like this type of content, greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video. As always, it is greatly appreciated. So for this format, I have to look gold to mythic to get a good enough sample size, and we have 12,000 games. So for comparison purposes, if I look at standard, we have 240,000 games, historic 34,000, explore 34,000, alchemy a mere fraction, if you would, of that amount. So we're going to jump into it. The top performing deck is Azorius Control. So a lot of these decks are built around the One Ring. So this is the kind of hottest card in Magic right now. In Modern, they're throwing this card into everything from like 4-color Money Pile to Tron to I've seen a burn list play this. Just everything is just 4 rings added in. This card's like the most expensive card on MTGO right now, I'm pretty sure. But what it does is it enters the battlefield, you get protection from everything until your next turn, and then you get to tap it and draw a card for each bird encounter on it. You put a bird encounter each time you tap it. Your upkeep, you take a damage for each bird encounter. But it's basically just colorless draw. You can reset it by just playing a second copy of the ring. And you, like in this deck here, you're using stuff like Union of the Third Path. So if you draw a lot of cards, you just gain a bunch of life that's in kind of iteration, which is really nice. So it's playing a bunch of removal. You got Fragment Reality. This is also an answer to the ring. Soul Partition also happens to be an answer to the ring. So exile removal over a Braid is very impactful because of Indestructible. So you have Reprieve, which is kind of Remand. So this bounces something on the stack. You get to draw cards, so a nice way to replace the card. Divine Purge is a good sweeper for all the aggressive decks, deals with treasure tokens, anything incidental, taxes them that way. This deck is playing Oracle the Alpha, so you could put your Power 9 into the deck. There's Somran's Trickery, so you counter target spell and a Mass and Orc. So it's a counter spell that also gives you a body, so indirectly this is kind of a win condition, but it's kind of a slow way to just get a blocker, get some damage in, and kind of go from there. Then we have Gandalf the White, so flash 4/5. You may cast legendary spells and artifacts as though they had flash. So you could flash in your One Ring, for example. If a legendary permanent or artifact entering the battlefield causes a trigger to ability, triggers an additional time. So you technically get double protection, which isn't super relevant, but in this case, it's more just like a flash threat that you could flash this in on your opponent's end step. You have Kalim that can tap down stuff and is also basically the win condition of this deck. You just kind of keep, for 2 mana, you get a 5/6 after you've cycled it a couple times. This sees play in Historic as well. So it's a reasonable threat there, and then a copy of Farewell. From there, we go to Rakdos Midrange. So this is another deck playing the Ring. The Ring plays really nicely with Shieldred because you gain a bunch of life. This version's on the Invoke double copy, Chandra double copy Invoke. Fable's still around in this format, as well as Invoke, so very powerful. You got Crucius here. That gets you kind of tutorable cards, ramps, fixes your hand, all that jazz. And then the big card is Orcish Bowmaster. So this pings a lot of the small creatures in the format. Punishes your opponent drawing by dealing damage, either to them or to any permanent they control. It amasses you orcs. Really flexible card that can be flashed in as well. So it plays really nicely with all the instant speed interaction in the format. This deck is also playing Mount Doom. So a ping land that can ping, and then if you sacrifice the One Ring and Mount Doom, you get to choose up to 2 creatures and destroy the rest. So kind of a board wipe. Resets your One Ring in this deck and sweeps the opponent's board. You also have Barad-dûr that lets you amass zombies amass orcs. Sorry, if a creature died this turn. From there, Mono Red Aggro. So this was kind of the premier deck in the format, but they massacred our boy. So this is a deck. Last August, I popularized a version of it when I got #1 Mythic. Since then, it's had a couple iterations and has been towards the top of the format, in Best of One at least. Very aggressively slanted deck, but I think this is largely kind of fallen off in part just due to the fact that like Tiefling Outcast just gets incidentally pinged by Bowmaster, same with Big Spender, kind of creating 2 bodies there. But the Kumano got nerfed, and now the backside no longer has haste, and then this got nerfed as well and now costs 4 mana. Which kind of reduces the efficiency of the card. But an aggressively slanted red deck, similar to what we see in Standard, but Dramatic Prank was a big card that got rid of blockers, gave you an extra attacker, and did incidental ping damage. A big kind of turn was like 2 of these in your openers could kind of run away with the game as well. You kind of lose that viability just with these more aggressive decks. I'm actually curious, something that I may try if we ever get to this format is One Ring Mono Red. Just like low curve and then just keep drawing cards every turn, and then just try to burn them out that way there. Could be something to try out. From there, we go to Nazgul Mono Black. So Nazgul is an interesting card because it lets you have 9 of them in your deck. When it enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. Whenever the ring tempts you, you put a counter on each wraith you control. So each one incidentally puts more counters on each other. You also have Call the Ring that you get to tempt you on the beginning of each turn. The ring tempts you is kind of like a dungeon that gives you each mode. You get a ring bearer, which is you target a creature. They get added abilities, and they become a legendary creature. This also lets you draw some cards. Deadly Dispute's still in the format, so you can draw some cards off your stuff. You got Golem, which lets you get some ring tempting and gets you to sacrifice to return from the graveyard, so a pseudo-recursive body. You got Sheoldred's Invokes in here. We got Witch King of Angmar. So 5 mana, 5/3, another Wraith that plays with the Nazguls. Whenever 1 or more creatures deal combat damage to you, each opponent sacrifices a creature that dealt damage to you this turn. Ring tempts you. You can discard a card, and Witch King gains indestructible. So tough to deal threat. And then you have Ring Wraiths. 6 mana, 5/5, enters the battlefield. Target creature an opponent controls gets -3/3. It's legendary. They also lose 3 life, and then you could return it from your graveyard to your hand whenever the ring tempts you. And then a couple copies of Barad-dûr kind of mixed into there. Then we have Dimir Oracle, another ring deck with Rusko. So this is kind of pseudo-infinite. You could just keep playing spells with Displacer Kitten, bounce the Oracle, or bounce the One Ring. You get to reset your protection every turn, draw some more cards, reset it with Rusko, then eventually you flip Midnight Clock, draw a bunch of more cards, and just kind of go pseudo-infinite that way. Take a bunch of turns with the Oracle finding you Time Walk, or like Black Lotus, free stuff like that with the Moxes. You also have Bowmaster in this deck, and then you just have like Interaction, Fading Hope for bounce, Mind Spike for hand hate. Piece it together, if you cast it 4 times, you get an extra turn. So just kind of playing into that, try to take all the turns style strategy with the One Ring and stuff. So from there, so this list actually got #1 Mythic by Feder MC, #1 Mythic in June. So it is a Jund mid-rangey list. It is best of 3, but something if you want to maybe try in best of 1. So Delighted Halfling lets you ramp up pretty nicely to your 3 mana legends, and it fixes your mana, makes them uncounterable. So turn 2 Liliana or Crucius kind of gets the ball rolling. It is a 1-ring deck, so you get that value, and then just a bunch of removals. Hand Hate, Assemble the Team lets you find key pieces. You got some Chandras, Sheoldred, Bowmasters to kind of grind out that deck. Then we go to kind of a cool one. This got #30 Mythic. It is an Esper Aggro list, and it's built around Priest of Possibilities. So when it enters a battlefield, you look at the top 7 cards of your library. If a card among them has flying, basically whatever the keyword is on it, you get to stack all those keywords onto Priest of Possibilities. So in the deck, you have, I don't know if Toxic works. Don't think Toxic works, but you have Flying, you have First Strike, you have Vigilance, you have Lifelink. So you have Double Strike, so you can just make a really big body and then just kind of kill them that way there. Seen some of the lists even play stuff like Atraxa, kind of cheating that in, but it's an Inquisitor Captain deck, kind of like an Esper Creatures with Rafine in there. Urborg Scavengers kind of does a similar idea that eats away at creatures in your graveyard to get extra stats as well. So kind of a cool little Esper deck there. And then lastly, we have number 12 Mythic earlier in the month. This is Alchemy Ascend. So basically with this deck here, you're putting creatures into your graveyard. So with like Rona, Diviner, Rafine, so you're just trying to dump a bunch of creatures into your yard, and then you cast Ascend the Avernus, and you have to return all creatures with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you kind of get just a mass board reanimation, and then kind of alpha swing them that way. Patriarch's Humiliation, go for the Throat as removal, and then just like Shield Druids kind of value play. So it's kind of a aggressively slanted creature deck that also just has a backup if they have a lot of removal to just return everything in your graveyard to the library. So that's it for Alchemy. I know folks don't really like Alchemy. At one point I did, but they've done a very poor job managing the format. The fact that like Crucius is still around, that Rakdos is just kind of omnipresent in every nature is a little silly. So like I've kind of stepped it away from the format, but if you've been trying out anything, having success, let me know in the comments. I'll probably only do it for this week, this video, judging from what kind of view stats. Like if the video does very poorly, then we probably won't be covering it anymore. If a lot of people find benefit from this, then we can maybe review it again next week. But in any case, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one and stay safe out there.